Hi, I'm Rob Peters, author of the Small Business CEO's Playbook, and I help small business owners learn how to grow and succeed in a very crowded small business environment.
You're watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration, where we share interviews with incredible leaders who are crushing it in life and business.
Rob, hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You've built a respected name in entertainment and small business for over 3 decades now. What inspired you to turn that experience into a playbook for small business?
20 years ago, the mobile DJ industry had no business acumen. I have a degree in communications and business, and I grew up around small business, so I have a lot of that in my blood. And in the mid-1990s, there were a lot of conventions for DJs that focused on performance, but didn't really do anything about teaching mobile entertainers how to be business people, how to run a business, how to budget. So 20 years ago, I actually wrote a book called The Business of Mobile DJing. It was actually written specifically for the DJ industry. And we wound up selling about 500 copies over 2 years. And that launched me as an expert in business in the mobile DJ industry. Flash forward to 20 years later, I was out with some friends and we were out one night talking about authors and people that we knew that wrote books. And I just blurted out, I wrote a book. And my friends found it really hard to believe that I actually wrote a book. So they wound up jumping online, finding a copy on Amazon, eBay, that one of them bought for $5, which, I originally sold that book for about $25 when it was on the shelf. So he took it, read it, and told me it was really good stuff and that I should really think about making it more relevant. And that stuck with me for about a year. He and I were traveling last year, and on the way back, he wound up talking me into actually rewriting the book, but I didn't want it to be specifically for one industry. So I took a look at my experience and the things I had gone through. And it wasn't just about being a DJ. It was about being a small business owner. So I decided to give this playbook and fill it up with information, not only information that I had written in the first book, but it was also things about the mistakes I made and the successes I had and how we did it, and put that into the Small Business CEO's Playbook.
That's awesome. And is that available on Amazon and stuff as well?
In hard form, but if you did want the Kindle version, you can find it on Amazon.
For a business owner who's stuck wearing all the hats, where should they start shifting from self-employed to CEO?
So the term CEO in the small business world, anybody who's run their own business knows that if you're a CEO, you're not just the chief executive officer, you're technically the chief everything officer. You're the bookkeeper, the hiring manager, the accountant in some cases. You're the marketing guy. If you have a brick and mortar kind of place, you're the guy that vacuums the floor and cleans the
janitor as well. Yep.
That's really where that comes down to. The big thing that I recommend for any small business owner is if you don't have a plan, you're not going to get anywhere. It's kind of like if you plan a road trip. A lot of times you jump on your phone, you enter in an address, and you're off and running. In the small business world, it's got to be the same way. You've got to have an end destination in sight first. So that's really the first big piece of advice is if you're going into business, know why you're going into business. Are you going into business because this is your passion? Maybe you're a carpenter and woodworking has been your passion since you're a kid and you've been doing it on the side and now you're deciding to take the plunge. That's what happened to me as a mobile DJ. I did it for part-time for a long time. And my mentor actually talked me into quitting my day job and actually going out and doing this. So I think the first big thing is a plan. The second thing is if you can find one, find somebody who is doing it full-time as a business and see if they will network with you and maybe be that person that you can bounce things off of. Maybe become a mentor to you to help you succeed. Those are really
talked a little bit before.
Those are really the first two big things for me.
Perfect. Now, I talked a little bit before the show started here about the trade shows and those kind of things. When I used to own retail stores, I had a pharmaceutical company, a medical laser company that did vein removal and like varicose vein removal. Had a string of cell phone stores. One of the things that I did with all of our employees early on was we'd hire young folks who were just go-getter, ambitious kids that didn't have a lot of experience yet. But I'd take them out to trade shows and conventions and stuff and let them start meeting and figure out how to, I'd tell them, when you come on, I hope you're not working for me in 2 years. I hope you learn everything you can, go out, start your own business, and are just crushing it, and we can work together somehow. But I'm not trying to keep you there. There is no cap on this business. That's something I saw a lot with other businesses though in our field, where they'd try to keep employees stuck in that field. And you don't hire good employees if they're planning on staying with you for the next 50 years, huh?
I think one of the things as a mentor and as even a small business person, the networking factor and the fact that you can, as a mentor, and let's start there, as a mentor, to be able to take somebody that is eager to learn and even maybe the ones that aren't, taking them to a convention is a huge eye opener. I've taken some of my DJs to some of the DJ expos and conventions. And one of the things for me is watching them have that moment where their eyes light up and they're like, wow, this is a lot bigger than me. And that's really, at that moment, whether they're in or they're out. And if they're in, I love it when they work for me, but I also love it when I get that call of, hey, listen, I've developed my own thing. And quite honestly, I love working with you, but I want to try this on my own for a while. And will you be here to coach me? And I've done some of that over the years with some of the people that have worked for me. Luckily, I still have a great enough relationship with them that when I'm in a jam, I can call them and they'll still come out and work with me, which is great.
And that's awesome. Now, what's one chapter or principle from your book that most small business owners overlook but shouldn't?
Well, there's a couple of them. And I wrote this book as a practical guide. And that was really the thing. When I sat down and took all the information from the first book, I had it clumped over here. And then I looked at some of the other things that I could add to it and I made it work. The two big key things in this book that I think are useful to small business owners. The first one is the chapter about networking. We live in such a weird world right now where virtual meetings and AI and everything else is really the big topic of conversation. And what winds up happening is we're losing this connection, right? We're losing the talking to somebody as opposed to talking to a computer. And I think there's some genuine factor when you're in business that really shows in earning a customer's trust if you are genuine with them and you're in that moment and upfront with them. The other one are the top 10 unbreakable rules for small business success, which a lot of them are common sense, right? Like return your phone calls and your emails for anybody who reaches out to you. That seems so commonplace that it's really easy to put as one of the big rules. But when you talk about one of the other rules I have, one of them is about education. I think ongoing education as a small business owner, whether it's industry related or small business related, is so important. And it's one of the things that a lot of people overlook because you get busy. Your calendar fills up, you get busy with calls or sales appointments or whatever that is. The next thing you know, you're forgetting to keep up with the trends and you're going, where did everything go? The other one is about Goodwill. In your local communities, you are the small business person. You're also recognized as someone who maybe is a resident of that community. Maybe in addition to owning your business, you're also the Little League coach or something like that. Having Goodwill in your business is a great way to give yourself what I call the good guy reputation. You want to be that good guy reputation that gives back to the community that you're in so that they will support you. So it becomes cyclical, right? It becomes one of those things that you're in the community, you're serving the people in the community, and you're giving a little bit back because you want to strengthen that community.
I love that. Now, if you're watching this right now on a newer smart TV on Amazon Fire TV, I'd recommend pausing the show, scroll down. On a newer smart TV, you can actually scroll down and click the link from your TV and have that delivered directly to your, whether it's a tablet, smartphone, whatever device you'd like to read on. But grab a copy of the Small Business CEO's Playbook. You can get that as a Kindle version or off Rob's site here. You can get it as a hardback. But I would love to also hear that as an Audible book. Are you planning on making that as an Audible? Or?
At some point. So we launched the book in February. And obviously, between running my business and doing some consulting and trying to do a lot of what we're doing today, that takes up a lot of my time. And I'm trying to keep that work-life balance, right? Like I still have a family I want to spend time with. It's springtime here in New England, so I like to go camping and look forward to that. Doing an audiobook is in the cards. It's going to be out probably last quarter of this year. But as you can probably imagine, that involves 15 chapters, being in a studio for that long and reading and if you're like me, I'm a perfectionist. So I'm one of those people that I'm
Reading
going
and
to want to
rereading and
make
rereading.
sure that every word that comes out of my mouth not only is genuine and reflective of the book, but also shows a little bit of the passion I have for helping small business owners.
That's one thing you'll see with the audiobooks that really crush it. The vocal tonality and the pausing and just making sure that each point really hits is so important. I think you'd be great at that. Just hearing you on camera here, you're a great
I used to do a
conversationalist.
lot of that. So in the DJ industry, I was involved as one of the pioneers of doing education beyond the conventions. I actually worked with a gentleman out of Connecticut, and we would host a podcast. But back then, it wasn't something we could do online. So it was driving to Connecticut or meeting somewhere and recording 4 or 5 segments, which is great. But again, being in a studio for that long and doing that stuff, it is very time consuming. It's very tedious. It can be a lot of fun when you're working with the right people or working with the right topic.
Absolutely. Now you've helped business owners grow in multiple industries. What's a core principle from your book that applies across the board?
I think the big thing is it gets back to one of the questions I often get asked, and I actually do mention this in the book. It's about the one skill or the one thing that every small business owner needs, or training wise, if you will. And I think what that comes down to is you've got to have your plan, but you got to know how to sell. And I think that's one thing that's really important is if you're passionate about what you do, selling becomes easy, but selling isn't telling. So you can't have a conversation that is me, I. It's going to sound good to the person on the other end, but they don't care so much about that. They care about that awesome FM station. What's in it for me? WIFM. If you're not tuning them into that station with what you're talking about, you're missing out. And I think that's one of the things small business owners overlook in a lot of cases is they get wrapped up in the look at me. And I saw a lot of this in the DJ industry when I wrote that first book. It was, I'm great. I have the best gear. I do this, that, the other thing. And the next thing you know, you're having people call in and you're hearing conversations. The one question I used to ask a prospective bride is, what brought you to me? And when you have that conversation and it becomes, well, I called 5 other people and you're the only one that listened. Everybody else told me how great their equipment was or how long they've been doing this. And I took that as a light bulb moment way back when. And that's how I built my business. And I think that's something that I still experience to this day as a consumer. I go out to small businesses. That's the one thing about the book that's really neat is I've changed my personal thinking about where I shop because I want to see what small businesses are doing so I can keep up with it. And I've done that conversation in a hardware store in my town where I've asked a question and it's been, this product's great. It does this, it does this, it does this. And I've had conversations at
How
other
does it
hardware
solve my
stores,
problem?
but other hardware stores have been like, what are you using it for? Are you using this to seal the roof on your RV? Are you using this to seal a leak under us? What is this being used for? And is this really the best product you want?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a huge thing where so many business owners, you hear small businesses before they open up a second, third, fifth store. A lot of times somebody comes in, let's say a computer repair shop, for example, come in, they talk about, or maybe they're building computers, talking about the specs and the processor and the speed and the graphics card and whatever, bunch of junk that the average consumer could care less about. Now you walk into the Apple store and they're talking about, they're asking questions. How is this going to fit you? How's this? And they're pitching you on the correct solution to your problem. And it may not even be the best solution, but it's where you really feel like you were heard in it.
The best example of that, think about the movie Tommy Boy with Chris Farley. There's a scene in that movie where they're meeting with a parts dealer and David Spade's character comes out and says, well, our brake pads are made of the best nickel, this, that, and the other thing. And the customer shuts him right down and says, you're out of time. I'm really not interested. And that really should have been the end of the meeting as far as the customer goes. But when you see what Chris Farley's character does in that moment, that's really a great example of that because it takes the tech out and he starts talking to what those main concerns are. And that's such a great example. And it's funny because I talk about that movie when I present sometimes as something that people should look at when you feel like you're getting too technical. I use that sound clip a lot.
I love that. How do you help business owners move from being reactive to being more strategic? Is that in your book as well?
We don't cover that a lot in the book. I think the big thing when it comes to reactive and strategy, one of the things we do talk about in the book is in addition to your business plan. Now, your business plan is that big document, right? But having a strategic plan and sticking with it is really important. But you also need to, I guess, to answer your question, you need to bring that reaction in a little bit and maybe adjust on the fly certain things that you're working on that you planned in your mind is going one way, and maybe make adjustments along the way. But I think if you stick to a well-versed plan, again, I'm a big movie guy, so I'm going to quote a movie here that maybe not a lot of your viewers know. It was an 80s movie. It was called One Crazy Summer. It starred John Cusack and Demi Moore. And there's a scene in there where Curtis Armstrong's dad owned a Army-Navy store. He's one of those military guys. And he goes, without a plan, there's no attack. And without an attack, there's no victory. And I think that that's a big mantra when it comes to running a business. If you don't have a plan, you're just wandering aimlessly. You're depending on hope instead of strategy. But you need to be reactive as well, because you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you're not looking at it here and there and maybe tweaking some things that maybe either are working too well or not working enough, it's not going to help.
Now, again, talking about before the show, I was showing you the cover of one of my clients there that generated over $1.2 million in total revenue on speaking. Mm-hmm. We get speakers on all the time that are trying to figure out how to brand themselves, and they've got a goal. Well, I want to make $100,000 this year through speaking. I want to make $1 million, whatever. But most of them, everybody that fails has no plan. I mean, not everybody that has a plan still succeeds, but like him, they're generating $1.2 million in revenue. He had a plan how many calls he needs to make every single day, how many booked appointments he needs, how many, all the stuff laid out to a T, and his goal is $1 million, generate $1.2 million by following that plan exactly every single day. But yeah, I think that's a huge thing you see people miss, where you've got these pie in the sky, big dreams, and no idea how it's ever going to happen unless God drops it out of an airplane.
I used to have this saying and look at things and I'd be like, wow, we did really well with the plan we had. But I also look at the things that happened outside the plan that we didn't count on. I guess you want to call it the accidents, right? And you would look at certain events that came in and be like, wow, we had no idea this was coming in. How did it come in? And when you look at some of the things that you do as a business owner and you look at those accidental moments that worked, right? And then you put some effort into it. Imagine what you could do if you actually did it on purpose. Yeah. We used to talk about that a lot in the early years when I was running my business, is look at how many people came in and we didn't even count on it because we marketed a certain way. And the next thing you know, we're putting more effort into that and it's growing and it's exponential. So it was really cool.
I love that. Some advice that I heard recently was asking your top best customers, why did you end up buying from me? What was the reason you did business with us versus the 30 other companies that do the exact same thing we do? Getting that and then starting to highlight that towards your next client. I thought that was a pretty neat.
That's a pretty cool concept too. You want to understand where they came from, because that also tells a tale, right? The ones that find you from Google are a lot more of a sales process because they literally don't know a heck of a lot about what you do. But if they're a referral based on either a previous client or a previous experience with your product or service, in our industry, it was, were they a guest at an event? If they were a guest at an event, they already know what we can do. So That was really a cool experience because we could sit down with them at that point and say, listen, we are not going to do the same thing we did at your wedding, at their wedding, at your wedding. Like, we're going to learn, and you're going to tell me right now, what did you like at Jill and Greg's wedding? What didn't you like at Jill and Greg's wedding? And what would you like to see that we could do different? And I think that those are important questions to ask, especially when you get referrals. It's still a process to have that conversation, but you're missing a great opportunity to really tailor and set yourself as more of a professional that cares about your customer when you ask questions about, how can I make this about you? As opposed to, hi, I'm a DJ. I'm going to do 5 hours. We're going to play this music and we're going to get everybody on the dance floor. There's differences there.
Yeah. One is selling, here's what I want from you. Mm-hmm. The other one is, here's what I can give to you. Here's how I can solve your problem. I had a guy actually yesterday approach us that I've met him, talked to him before, but he had been following on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of the different social media stuff, and seeing the clips that we put out over and over again with the magazine. And he said, is there a way I'd love to get featured on the cover? What's the cost? And so I told him, and he said, okay, send me an invoice for that right now. Is it possible to prepay instead of doing this afterwards? So he went ahead and sent the entire prepaid thing before we ever even had our first meeting.
Wow.
But that was not because of anything that I said during that conversation. It was, he's seen over and over and over again, the personal brand online. And, you know, they say people do business with people that they know, like, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
How do they do business with you if they can't find you online? So what you just said was exactly really solidified what I just heard yesterday, that generates pretty good payment without any work.
One of the things we talk about in the book, that to kind of expand on what you're talking about a little bit, is we talk about things like referrals, repeat business. Truth be told, in my business, actually, as of right now, 80% of our business is either repeat customers or referrals. We get very little off the internet as organic. Like, it's very rare for somebody to go, I found you on Google, I need a game show for this. Or I found you on Google, I want a photo booth for my wedding. A lot of it comes from word of mouth referrals from venues. And it's because we've established ourselves as not being a traditional company now. We took a lot of steps pre-COVID, and then COVID came along, right? When the pandemic hit, our things changed, but we were working towards where we are now in 2015, 2016. That was our plan. 2020 was ideally supposed to be the year where things took off, and we were to take that model and run with it. And as we all know, the pandemic did a number on that. A lot of conventions, a lot of meeting business went down the drain. And we had about a year where we rebuilt, we pivoted a lot. We did some really unusual stuff during the pandemic because a lot of small business owners, including us, there were great programs out there, but quite honestly, we still needed to do the basics of paying our rent and our insurance, and music was coming out. So there was all that going on too. And we had to pivot and come up with ways to make it so that our business stayed relevant so that we could be here in the end. And a lot of that came down to just some creative thinking. But again, we also depended on a strong web presence because some of the things we did, we needed to be able to use the internet to do. But we also depended on our client base. Our client base were our best cheerleaders throughout all that.
Well, and that's something, I mean, even if you go, you look, you talk to a bunch of people to get your house painted or get your car worked on or something. The first thing people do now is go to the internet and see, okay, have people made videos of this, or have they left a review? Is there social credibility proving that this person I just talked to face to face, that they actually are who they say they are? I know you talked about the COVID thing, but what has driven you? I know you're crushing it right now on podcasts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What has driven you to get into all of these interviews and really start building that personal brand online, where it's not just face to face?
So I'd written the book because I thought I looked at where I was career wise, and I have been speaking within the entertainment and event industries for a number of years. One of the things for me, there are a lot of people out there, you hear the term side hustle, and you probably see it on like Instagram Reels or anything like that. Here's a way you can make money as a side hustle. And that's great. I started out as a side hustle, and I was very fortunate. I had a mentor, but my mentor didn't go through half the stuff I've gone through in 38 years of doing this. So when I got into the book and started getting into doing speaking and things like that, my purpose was, I think small business owners don't get a fair break in society as opposed to the public guys, the big guys like the Walmarts and the Targets and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we only celebrate small business on a national level like twice a year. The first one is around Thanksgiving. I think American Express does a great job with Small Business Saturday, although I think the timing of it should be a lot different. We do Small Business Saturday the day after Black Friday, which is when all those sales are hyped up, right? And what happens is
after everybody's already got what they need.
Yeah, they've already spent their money. So now we're telling everybody, okay, if you got something left over, go see the small business down the road. The guy in your community that's donating to the Little League team or whatever that is, right?
Yep.
The only other time we really celebrate is the beginning of May, which is Small Business Week. And that doesn't even get a lot of national exposure. And it's something that, quite honestly, these are people that keep your communities alive and pay taxes in your communities. We should be supporting them a lot more. And maybe it is $1 or $5 more than finding it at the box store, but it's people helping people. And again, not to knock
Yeah.
the big box stores, they got it covered and they do a great job with it. But there are a lot of small businesses that I've seen over the years that were a great concept and maybe had something that you can't get at a big box store, and they just don't get the traction. And that's what I wanted to do with
Yep.
all this, is to be able to give them and know that there's somebody out there that went through a lot of the bumps and bruises and challenges that they're going through right now. And if I can do it, and I hate to say this because it's going to sound weird, if I can do it, they should be able to do it too. And if I can give them that nudge of help, whether it's in the book or on stage, or maybe as part of an interview like this, that gives them that drive to keep going, then I'm doing what I should be doing.
Well, even if just being able to get a copy of your book for what, $30 it is, it looks like on Amazon right now, be able to grab a copy of that book and learn from what your failures and wins. What is that worth over the years? With just to hire a coach or consultant is a whole lot more than $30 for an hour. You can take that book and go through an entire lifetime of coaching there with
those
what
lessons
you're
to
teaching.
me
So
are priceless. And that's why I put them in the book, is you can't make those mistakes twice unless you're actually in that moment in the exact circumstances we're in.
now, switching over to personal branding. Personal branding isn't just for influencers. Why is it critical for small business owners to build a brand around themselves?
It's about people. It's people helping people, really. And if, again, it gets back to something you said earlier, if they like you and they trust you, and those two key things are very important in a personal brand, they're going to refer and or buy from you.
That's one of the things that I liked on yours as well. That's a good point. And I love that you've got your domain name is robpeters.biz. So again, if you're on this, if you're watching this on Amazon Fire TV, pause, go over to his site, robpeters.biz, check it out, see what he offers. It's always a smart thing. You get people on sometimes that have got some random business name, with their city name or something in it that has nothing to do with their personal brand. So I love that you're doing that.
I wanted it to be about me, because at the end of the day, I can best explain what I've gone through. And I think again, one of the things with the book, and even with some of the speaking I do, I have a 4-year degree from a college where I took communications and business. 95% of the stuff that I either speak about or have put in the book is not something I got when I got my degree. It's not something I learned. And that's really where this fills it in for small business owners and side hustlers. And, I even talk a little bit about, you look at people in financial planning. They are establishing their own personal brand, even though they might work for a big umbrella like a Fidelity or, a New York Life or something like that, right? But again, they're establishing their business as part of that. So think of like franchise, right? It's people helping people. And that's what this is also good for, is it's for people in those roles. You think realtors, the same thing with them. This is a great way to help them. But again, personal branding is so important because I've worked for several different big agencies. Like I went from working for myself and went to work for 2 big agencies over 38 years. And I took a lot of my clients with me because they liked me and they knew they could trust me. And when those opportunities changed, those people still came with me no matter where I went. And that really speaks to
awesome.
a success that you can have in the business world. Again, we live in a world right now where everything is computerized and you're texting and you're doing all this stuff. A good, in my opinion, cup of coffee with a colleague or a customer is so much more beneficial than the cell phone I own. You get more out of it.
This interview is sponsored by Newswire magazine. We celebrate the entrepreneurs and thought leaders shaping the future. Those who don't just adapt, but innovate. Who inspire others to think bigger, lead boldly, and create lasting change. Only a select few are featured in Newswire magazine. And for those who earn a place on the cover, the opportunities are unmatched. Your story shared with a global audience. Your achievements celebrated on national billboards, reaching millions. Every leader has a story. Every vision deserves a platform. Who will rise to the top? Stay tuned. You're witnessing greatness unfold.
Hey, welcome back to Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. We're on today with Rob Peters. Rob, you've seen the power of positioning and authority. What happens when a local business owner starts showing up as an expert?
A lot of things happen. I think the big thing is your credibility attracts people to you that want to know more. They want to know more about what you do or how you got there or what you know. If you've got that credibility, and there's in the sales classes that I've taken, one of the things they want you to avoid doing is free consulting. I think that free consulting and that credibility really does help attract more business to you in a very small way. And it's just the fact, even thinking about like what we're doing here today, it's establishing my credibility in working small business for 38 years. And to be able to use that as an opportunity to help other businesses, whether it's through the book or maybe a convention, or even going as far as doing something, if they were to call up and say, listen, can I pick your brain and can we sit down and talk about it? I've got some concerns, or how did you set up text marketing for your business? There's a whole bunch of different ways for that to work. But I think when people see you as an expert, your stock rises amongst your competitors, especially if it's marketed right. And that's what the other thing that's really important about it is marketing your personal brand. And I'm a very humble person. In fact, growing up, I was the shy kid. That's a whole nother story. Getting
It's
into
hard to
this,
believe.
I went to my class reunion for the first time at my 30th class reunion some years ago, and we were the DJ. And it was myself and one of my DJs. And when I ever opened the microphone and started talking to the class, they were like, wow, we didn't expect this out of you whatsoever. But I think that wow moment to the people in your community and the people in your industry is something that it's definitely a bonus, but I definitely think it helps you open some more doors of opportunity. And I think that's really what does happen when you are recognized with credibility and as an expert.
Now, from your coaching experience, what separates the small businesses that scale from the ones that really stall?
Drive and motivation, really. I think the ones that really see the value in wanting to scale up have a plan, and they put it into motion, and they have an end sight in mind. The ones that stall are the ones that, to use the phrase, they throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and hope it sticks. I've talked about with some people in the past, spray and pray marketing, where you market 15 different ways and you hope and you pray that you're going to get that call. And the problem is people look at great opportunities out there and they look at that and go, wow, this sounds great. I'm going to go for it. And what ends up happening is it doesn't end up working out because it's either not implemented right or it wasn't the right fit for them. They get caught up in what I call the new best friend syndrome. Think about when you have a new best friend. When you make a new best friend and you spend time with them, you begin to neglect all those other friends you have for a while. Think about it more in the dating scene. When you're dating somebody and you begin to get into them and you begin to get into that part of your relationship where you're spending a lot of time together, and your friends call you up and go, hey, you want to go out and grab dinner? And you're like, oh, no, I'm spending time with so-and-so. That new best friend syndrome can apply in this case to the businesses that stall because they get wrapped up in that and they don't realize that they've strayed off the path of what could work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard that described quite a few different ways, where people saying basically multitasking is not really possible. I had a guy one day called it squirrel syndrome. He said it's like a dog in the park just watching random squirrels and doesn't catch any of them because he keeps straying off. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that was a good. I'd never heard of it like the new best friend syndrome. But so you're basically saying stay focused, have a plan, know where that plan is taking you, and take the steps daily to get to that plan. So just
exactly
the next thing works, right?
And again, I think it gets back to that movie clip, and it's been so instrumental in what I've done. And again, to have that latch onto an 80s movie with John Cusack seems like a little much. But I think, again, we talked about this earlier. Knowing where you want to be is step one. Knowing what the finish line for whatever that time period is going to be. Is it a year? Is it 5 years? And then not only having that as part of your business plan, but also having a strategy on how to get there. Are there going to be things that are going to knock you out of your strategy? Absolutely. Are there going to be things in your strategy that isn't going to work and you're going to quit it 2 months into a 1-year cycle. Absolutely. But going through and making adjustments as needed to some of those things is going to be the way that you're going to get there. You think about climbing a mountain. You climb a mountain, and sometimes it's a sunny day and it's nice and you don't have wind and you don't have snow and it's not raining. And you get to a certain point, you begin to walk a smooth path for a little bit. You walk a little bit of a road or a path. And then the next thing you know, you're on the other side of the mountain where it's overcast and maybe the temperature dropped 10 degrees and it's starting to snow. These are all unexpected things that are going to happen. Knowing that they're going to be happening is really important, but knowing how you're going to handle them happening is going to be the bigger thing.
Now let's talk. I've only got a couple more questions for you. I know you're on a short schedule here. Let's talk to the business owner who's struggling or who's discouraged right now. What mindset shift do they need to make today?
The first, the saying goes, part of solving your problem is realizing you have one. It sounds so basic. The second thing I'll add is there's nothing wrong with asking for someone to help you. I think, again, developing a personal brand, we get really proud really quick, right? We get proud of this is me, I, and we pound our chest, right? But asking for help, I mean, I had a great, and I still do, I have a lot of people in the small business and in the entertainment industries that I still reach out to for advice and help. It's a hiccup in the road. It does not have to be the end of the road. But sometimes looking out, and again, this may seem a little self-serving where I'm doing small business advocacy and coaching and products and stuff like that. Asking for help from somebody, and I want to preface one thing, because this is one of those 10 rules that I talked about earlier, asking the right person for help. And what I mean by that, if you go on to Facebook, there are all these groups of people who do what you do. It's kind of like a little networking place where you can go and you can ask for recommendations, you can ask for ideas, you can ask for advice. And I saw this happen in the DJ industry, and I literally I wanted to reach into the computer and find the person at the other end of the original post and go, why are you putting this here? They're in a room of other DJs asking for legal advice, like advice you should ask a lawyer. So one of the things I put as one of my 10 rules is if you need professional advice, ask a professional. But I think getting back to the premise of your question, it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to look around and realize that maybe something in your plan didn't work. Don't take it as a failure, though. Take it as an opportunity to have learned a lesson out of it. Maybe there was something in there you can salvage and put somewhere else. It really does vary subject by subject, but I think a lot of small business owners get wrapped up in, I'm not going to ask for help. I'm going to do it all myself. And the next thing you know, they're closing their doors and shutting down their website.
It's made fail by themselves as well, huh? That's powerful.
So don't be afraid of that. And you know what? We talk about this in sales. One of the things you want to do with a sales, I mean, look at the purpose of selling. You're selling to someone to get a result. A lot of times in sales training, that result is promoted as you're trying to sell them to get a positive result. Most sales trainers don't talk about the fact that someone telling you no is a result. And it's okay to take that. So don't be afraid to get to a no. Don't be afraid that failure is the end all be all. Because there's something in there you're going to take from it and learn, but you're going to have gotten a result out of it. And don't be afraid of that. If you have too many results that are of that manner, that's when you want to start asking for help. Finding a professional.
Man, I love that. I had a consulting client a little while back here who was saying she had, she was trying to raise funds for this event that she had coming up and was complaining that everybody that she talks to says no. You know, she had this whole thing. I said, well, what's the most common failure, or what's the most common objection? She wasn't really sure. So I finally broke down going, how many people are you talking to every single day? This is, we're leading up to the event. It's 90 days out. How many people are you hitting a day? Well, let's see, I talked to 6 yesterday. I was kind of bummed out, but I think I did probably 8 or 10 the day before that. Going, you should be getting 100% no's. You haven't even honed your pitch. If you're doing 6 or 8 a day, you should be doing 6 or 8. I mean, every few minutes as quick as you can get to them. But if you're pitching 100 companies a day and nobody's saying yes, there's probably a problem with your offer. If you're pitching that few, you have no clue what's even going on or what the problem is. Huh?
Looking at that scenario, one of the things I would say is a couple things. First of all, if you're closing zero, it's not necessarily what you're pushing. Maybe it's how you're pushing it, right? Like you've just talked about that. I think if you're 50-50, you've got the opportunity to tweak. I think if you're at about 80%, that's a victory, but you got to look at what that 20% that didn't book and why that didn't happen. And I think when you break it down that way, again, one of the things that we get into, and we talked about this earlier, is selling is telling, because that's what we're told, or that's what we experience when we go out and we shop for ourselves. Sometimes it gets rammed down your throat. But if you take just a couple of minutes to look at what your pitch is, I used to, and I actually still use them occasionally. When we were undergoing this whole transition, going away from a traditional entertainment company and going more into the game shows and stuff and where we were going, I actually put together an executive board that consisted of people that referred me, former clients, and a couple of industry people. And anything I needed to bounce off of them, anything that I wanted to learn more about, I went to that group and I said, what do you think about this? We would put our marketing in front of them and go, hey, check this out and tell me what you think. Even when we came up to the name of our slogan, which back at 2010 was creating the best events in New England, one celebration at a time. That went through about 20 rewrites because I kept on asking people for their opinion. So there's two things here. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but know that at some point you can't ask 100 people for that kind of help.
Yep.
But be sure you're asking the right people. And if it's a legal question or if it's a accounting question, you should not be asking peers in your industry. Watching people answer that question, by the way, these are people in the DJ industry who do not have law degrees. And I basically just said, why have you not called a lawyer? Well, I thought I'd get advice here first to see if anybody's gone through. Well, you're in Missouri, and the guy who answered the question's in Florida. And I mean,
Different jurisdictions even, huh?
The ridiculousness of one of these answers was, you're going to tell that it was basically a question about, it was a verbal agreement between an organization and the DJ. And what wound up happening was they wound up canceling the DJ and putting another DJ in after they had sold tickets to the event promoting the first DJ. And it was a fundraiser. And there were people going, tell them to cancel it. They have to give you a cut of the ticket. It's misrepresentation, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wait, whoa. None of you see two things here. First of all, none of you're asking legal advice on something that was done on a handshake. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is shame on the DJ
Hearsay
for not putting it in writing, because this probably wouldn't have happened. But the second thing is, do you really want to be known in your community as the bad guy that told that organization to shut down their event because you didn't do what you were supposed to do? Be a professional. If you act like one and present yourself like one, you're going to avoid all that stuff.
Yep. And that's something just Goodwill. When you are, if somebody cancels, we go through dozens and dozens of interviews a week, but somebody comes through and says, hey, I just don't have the funds for it, or I don't, whatever the reason is, like, man, good luck. I will still continue to text them some tips. Here's something you can tune up on your website. Here's something you could do on your CTA that would really help. I want to see you win, whether or not we ever do business together. I can't imagine being the company like that DJ that now you've just bought yourself unlimited negative word of mouth press there by being a jerk instead of just trying to help somebody do what the goal was originally. I love that.
Goodwill is such an important part of it too. So I learned about Goodwill before I even got into this whole business thing. My dad ran gas stations, and he worked for one of the major oil companies. He had 2 locations, and they had decided to remodel. This was right around the time that you began to see gas stations going from having repair bays to converting to convenience stores, right? He was one of the first ones in our area. And it was time for the grand opening. And I can remember the meeting between the marketing rep from the oil company, my dad, and me. And I can begin to see my dad becoming, I don't want to say frustrated, but it was a conversation that was involving him having to spend a little more money to do something that was a goodwill thing. And he didn't quite see the big picture on it. And the marketing rep said, listen, you can't put a price on future goodwill. Doing this may not yield a single thing, but I'm willing to bet that if you don't, I think it was a donation of a certain, like 2 cents a gallon during grand opening was going to go to this charity. But I have reason to believe that you're going to do very well because you're going to win the people over at the charity who are going to become your customers. And that actually wound up happening. And
lifetime
you can't
residual
put a price
on
on that. And even, my dad's gone now and his businesses are gone. But I just remember that lesson because we always want to give back something to be not. And again, if we got nothing out of it, we know we were the nice guys and we did what we felt was right. And that's an intangible that, quite honestly, gives me a lot of motivation to keep going in all this, which is it going to put more money in my pocket? At some point down the road, it probably will. But if it never did, I know that when it's time for me to close doors and go sit on a fishing boat somewhere at a campsite somewhere on a lake, I know I ran my business the right way, and that's really what counts to me.
Powerful. Now, this has been Rob Peters on success, motivation, and inspiration. Rob, give us one final thought for people watching this.
There's so many thoughts right now. I think the big thing is if you're on a path of small business success, just keep your ducks in a row, keep moving along, and remember one thing, at the end of the day, you cannot control what other people say, do, or think. So focus on keeping that noise out of what your direction is and keep an eye on the prize.
Thanks for being a guest, Rob. This is absolutely awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. This episode was designed to help you level up. See you next time.